Hello and welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday, which means yesterday was day 5 of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which means only one thing. This is the World Cup recap. The first of the 4 games yesterday was between Spain and Cape Verde, and we had our first goalless draw of the tournament. It was a first ever World Cup game and a first ever World Cup point for Cape Verde, and you could not help but be happy for them, as it was nearly like they won it. The celebrations that concluded the final whistle. You could not help but feel really happy for them as they held the European champions. They were totally peppered throughout by Spain, but it was an absolutely shambolic performance from Spain. They won the Euros only 2 years ago, and they might not have a few of the same players that were there, but most of the squad is there. 2 years, few players might have aged, but you're playing a team who's playing their first ever World Cup game, and you put out that sort of a performance. It was absolutely terrible. But to be honest with you, the draw is a lot more about Cape Verde than it is about Spain, so we're not really going to talk that much about Spain in this one, because they don't deserve any sort of airtime with the performance that they put in. We're going to just be talking about the absolute heroics that is Cape Verde's draw. A massive shout out to Roberto Pico Lopez, who put our country's league, the League of Ireland, on the world stage yesterday evening, putting in an unbelievable shift at centre half for Cape Verde. Made some brilliant clearances, especially a great header in the first half, which was bound for, I think, back post. It might have been Ferran Torres who was coming into the back post there, but he headed it away and claimed out the danger, and he was doing that throughout the game. So no, Pico was absolutely superb for Cape Verde. An unbelievable one of the game as well was 40-year-old goalkeeper Vozinho making 7 saves. He was like the Great Wall of China, the Great Wall of Cape Verde, we should be calling him. The athleticism of the man for 40 years old was absolutely outstanding, and it was definitely probably one of the standout individual performances of the World Cup so far. The second game of the day then was Belgium against Egypt, which finished 1-1. Emam Ashour with a brilliant strike to put the Egyptians 1-0 up. The equaliser then for Belgium, had it actually gone to Romelu Lukaku in the end, would have ended up being the 3rd fastest goal by a substitute in World Cup history at 23 seconds. Yet he actually didn't get a touch on it, and it did go down as an own goal in the end. But it was an instant impact, making himself a nuisance in the box, like he always has done throughout his career, really. So yeah, that's his presence got Belgium back into the game there. I was actually pleasantly surprised going into the game of how good Egypt were on the counter-attack, and I was even more surprised with how open Belgium were at the back. Every time Egypt looked to go forward, they nearly made a chance out of it, and were unlucky not to score on a couple of extra occasions. Thibaut Courtois was a bit hesitant on a couple of occasions for Belgium last night. He didn't look to be at his very best, but he didn't make any. Well, he made a couple of mistakes that could have costed goals, but luckily for him and for his country, nothing availed of them. Look, it was a very even game overall, really. Belgium did have a few chances to win it late on, especially Michele's header, which was brilliantly saved 7 minutes before added time. But overall, I do think that the draw was the fairest result in that one. The third game of the day was Saudi Arabia against Uruguay, which finished in a 1-1 draw. Saudi Arabia took the lead, I suppose, when the game was fairly balanced. Uruguay took a very long time to get their equaliser, but I think had they actually scored a good bit sooner, I do think that they probably would have went on to win the game. Saudi Arabia did very well to keep them out for as long as they did, but Uruguay just weren't very clinical going forward. Now, in fairness, a good few decent challenges late on in attacks and saves were made by Saudi Arabia, but Uruguay will definitely be disappointed with only just picking up a draw in that game. It was a great save from Mohamed Owais to deny Federico Valverde in the very dying moments of the game. A long range strike from Valverde nearly raspered into the bottom right corner, but the Saudi Arabian keeper did very well to put it out and keep the danger at bay. I think the thing that really stood out to me from the Uruguay game was, I suppose, it's probably the first time in about 20 years where we're seeing a Uruguay side really lack in any sort of attacking threat. You think back to the likes of Diego Forlan, Edison Cavani, Luis Suarez, they always had prominent strikers. Now they have Darwin Núñez, who just had his contract ripped up from the Saudi Pro League. I didn't really recognise many other Uruguayan attackers there. I know Palestri was at Man United one time, but I think I saw that he's playing now with Panathinaikos. So I think the lack of attacking threat that Uruguay once had is probably their biggest downfall. Uruguay were always a team that you'd actually you'd always say would give an opposition team a tough game, but I think if they're struggling now to even pick up a point against Saudi Arabia, the future doesn't really look too bright for them. And the fourth and final game of day 5 of the FIFA World Cup finished with a 2-2 draw between Iran and New Zealand. It was actually an unbelievably even game and probably the most entertaining game of the day. Mohamed Mehabi denied New Zealand of their first ever World Cup win with just under half an hour to go in that one. Look, like as I said, a very entertaining game. The likes of Chris Wood on show with New Zealand. Not too many players, in fairness, from either side that I would really recognise, but I think sometimes the kind of smaller nations who get to a World Cup and when they face each other nearly always live up to some sort of expectation of being end-to-end games, and that's what we saw with the fourth and final game of the World Cup on day 5. And probably the stat of the day was the fact that all 4 of the World Cup games on the 15th of June finished in draws. The last time that a World Cup day had 4 draws in it was also on the 15th of June 1958. So an absolutely unbelievable historical stat there for you. It was one of them ones where you're kind of saying, geez, 4 draws. And no, look, as I said, were many of the draws entertaining? Not really. In all fairness, as I said, probably Iran and New Zealand was probably the most kind of exciting out of all of them. I think the Spain and Cape Verde one was only exciting because you wanted Cape Verde to hold on. And coming up on day 6 of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, we've France, Senegal, Iraq, Norway, Argentina, Algeria, and Austria, Jordan. Of course, the holders of the World Cup, Argentina, play in their first game this evening against Algeria in what is probably Leo Messi's final World Cup for Argentina. Some other good games inside there as well. France and Senegal. Senegal are probably one of the better teams in Africa, which we all know of. So that'll be a good one. We're going to see Erling Haaland on the world stage, which is brilliant as well. And Austria and Jordan, it's kind of like what I was saying about Iran and New Zealand, that the kind of the lower teams who face each other might always kind of put up a decent bit of a game. So that'll be one to look forward to. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the channel to somebody who you think will really enjoy these recaps every day. And until the day 6 recap, I'll talk to you later.